this is from the New York Times. Now, I know it's normalized in our culture. Like, people feel peer pressured to be pro-genocide. It's a little strange. But in the New York Times, we have this really weird headline. At Head Start, masks remain on despite CDC guidelines. Now, this is one fuck mother of a headline. Like, this is like the fucking, 1984 shit, right? Like, wow. Okay, so there's so much information captured here. So part one of this is that the CDC recommends against masking. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention official guidelines state to do nothing to prevent control or spread of the virus at all. You do nothing. That's the official Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Official guidelines state do absolutely nothing at all to prevent transmission. And so a school is saying, actually, we're not, we believe in the science. You're a corrupt organization. So fuck you. And now the New York Times is writing articles like this. This is in New Jersey. The Biden administration has taken credit for a relative return to normalcy in schools over the last year of the coronavirus pandemic. 82% of people in this country under the age of 18 have had at least one COVID infection. We know that about 30% of people infected with COVID develop some long-term debilitating symptoms, known as long COVID, right? It's an unidentified, cluster of potential symptoms. 80%. Biden's like, oh yeah, 80% of kids got a virus? Hell yeah. Woo! But in one of the few education programs the federal government directly oversees, Head Start preschools and child care centers for low-income families, mandatory masking rules are still on the books for teachers and children as young as 2 years old. That requirement is out of line with current guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released last month, which recommended universal masking only if there is high community transmission rate, which there is in 100% of the country. Now, keep in mind, not just a month ago, right, but I think it was March or April of this year, they redefined what a high community transmission rate was, right? They just redefined it. So because all the counties in the country were at high risk or extremely high risk, they're like, let's just boost the numbers a little bit. So all the counties in the country overnight went from red zones to green zones. And now, even with the boosted, inflated metrics, most counties in the country are in red zones again. Why is that? Because the CDC is a pro-genocide organization. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, they're not in the job of controlling or preventing disease. They don't care at all. In fact, it is the exact opposite that is true. The CDC weaponizes its credibility among people that don't know any better to facilitate the transmission of disease, to make sure as many people as possible get infected with the disease. I don't know, man. A lot of people love to use the term 1984, but I don't know. Hey, just food for thought. Anyway, the strict Head Start guidelines were established last November during the surge of Delta variant infections, and they remain in place in half the states, including those throughout the Northeast and on the West Coast. In addition to universal masking, they require the Head Start staff members be vaccinated. A group of conservative states, including Texas and Florida, sued to prevent the rules from taking effect, and the federal court imposed an injunction on the guidelines in those states. Think about that. Think about this. Think about it. Republican lawmakers are suing the federal government or the federal government's program to make sure more people get sick and die. That's Republicans. They are going to use their power to ensure more people get sick and die. It's insane. Now, the masking and vaccine requirements are a point of contention for local Head Start centers, complicating both enrollment and hiring. A program director said many parents don't want their young children to be masked, worried that masking could hinder socialization and language development. And their older children are now able to attend schools without any face coverings. You know, again, we live in this Twilight Zone world. Like, COVID is worse now than it ever has been. More transmissible variants, right? There are less federal protections. Insurance companies are not mandated to provide health care or coverage for COVID or whatever. Before, like, the federal government was like, you need to give people free COVID health care. They don't need to do that anymore. So now they can just charge you out the windman for that shit. Right? Vaccine efficacy. I know we're getting a new booster shot soon. And I'm going to get this new booster shot as soon as possible. But do you know anyone else that's going to get the new booster shot as soon as possible? Also, is it going to be, are you going to have to pay for it? Because if you have to pay for the booster shot, I can tell you this right now. No one's going to get that fucking shit. Right? Testing is basically stopped. You get COVID, who knows? Right? You're not allowed to call out of work if you have COVID. Why? Well, you're not allowed to call out of work if you have the flu. Get back to work. This is some crazy ass shit. Crazy ass fucking shit. We live in the Twilight Zone. In a written statement, the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees Head Start, acknowledged that the current guidelines contradict those of the CDC, but said that the centers are not being checked for compliance on masking. Updating the official rules is a lengthy process, the statement said, which would take into consideration the CDC's evolving recommendations, the recent availability of vaccinations for children as young as 6 months, and over 2,700 public comments. So anyway, I can't. The struggle to mask young children became clear at a family orientation meeting this month at a Head Start center run by Accelero Learning in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. Silas, a 3-year-old with big round eyes and a buzz cut, has spent the pandemic at home, and he was pumped for the new adventure of pre-K. His surgical mask was no match for his enthusiasm, even though his grandmother, Olga Jimenez, reached over repeatedly to tug it over his mouth and nose. When he spied the play kitchen, okay, right, the pretend kitchen, I understand. The battle was all but lost. Silas bounded over, mask dangling. Soon a plastic chicken wing was in his mouth, and he was passing it back and forth to 3 other girls and boys. Now, again, that's a whole thing. We can have a conversation about how kids are hard to mask and it's difficult, but the idea that we're just going to give up, like what? Oh, kids are a little rambunctious and they don't quite understand why anyone would want to do this. So let's give up. Miss Jimenez sighed and said that she would prefer Silas to go to school without a mask. Some parents have academic concerns, even if masking can be mastered. What does that mean? Masking can be mastered. Like, what does that mean? The art of wearing clothing. Does, like, putting on a belt require, like, years of training? Melissa Ruiz's 2 children, Milani, and Gabriel, wore their face coverings like a second skin as they played with blocks and dolls. Both were enrolled in the center last year and are accustomed to the routine, which their mother supports. But Miss Ruiz said she wished Milani and Gabriel could see their full faces of their teachers during lessons. How about this? You take your mask off when you're outside and you're far away. Right? Maybe do more lessons outside. And when you're inside, well, you already know what she looks like or what he looks like or what they look like. So you're good to go. Have a couple outdoor lessons. Go to the playground. Play with some blocks outside. Take your mask off. Stand far away from each other. Bring one of those, like, rolling whiteboards out there. Get a little bit of FaceTime in. and then go back inside and put the mask on. I don't know why this is like, this whole thing with, like, again, the CDC is a pro-genocide, pro-eugenics organization, right? Democrats are just pretending like they've won. And 80% of kids have gotten infected with COVID-19, which has a 30% chance of providing long-term debilitating illness. Little crazy, but that's the US of A. We're a really smart country, extremely intelligent citizens in this country that are really just again, really smart people.